The Flamingo Hotel's grand ballroom sparkled like a jewel box on a night of September 23rd, 1960. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables draped in white silk. Champagne flowed freely. Tuxedos and evening gowns turned the space into a moving tapestry of elegance and wealth. This wasn't just another Vegas night. This was a charity gala for the Nevada Symphony Orchestra, bringing together two worlds that rarely mixed: the classical music elite and the entertainment royalty of the Las Vegas Strip. Dean Martin stood near the bar, drink in hand, looking relaxed in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. He was at the height of his fame, known worldwide as one half of Martin and Lewis before their split, and now as a member of the Rat Pack alongside Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. Dean's crooning voice had made him a household name. His easy charm and seemingly effortless stage presence made him appear like a man who'd never worked a day in his life. But that image was carefully crafted. Behind the smooth exterior was someone far more complex than audiences realized. The ballroom buzzed with conversation. Symphony patrons mixed uncomfortably with casino executives and entertainers. It was an arranged marriage of necessity. The symphony needed money, and the casinos needed cultural legitimacy. But the two groups eyed each other with mutual suspicion. To the classical musicians and their wealthy supporters, the Vegas entertainers were lowbrow, vulgar, mere crowd pleasers selling commercial pablum. To the entertainers, the classical crowd was pretentious, stuffy, and disconnected from real people. Dean didn't care much about the tension. He was there because Frank had asked him to show up, write a check, and smile for cameras. That was easy enough. He nursed his drink and made small talk, playing his role perfectly. The affable drunk, the charming fool, the guy who made it all look easy because thinking looked hard. That's when Christoph von Meister made his entrance. Von Meister was everything his name suggested: German, aristocratic, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair swept back from a high forehead, piercing blue eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles, and the kind of rigid posture that suggested he'd been trained to balance books on his head as a child. He was a celebrated concert pianist, educated at the Vienna Conservatory, performer at Carnegie Hall and La Scala, professor at Juilliard, and exactly the kind of person who believed there was music, and then there was everything else. Von Meister had come to Las Vegas reluctantly, lured by an obscene fee to perform a short recital at the gala. He moved through the crowd like royalty visiting a foreign land, nodding graciously, but making it clear through every gesture that he was slumming. His wife, equally refined and equally disdainful, matched his energy perfectly. The recital was scheduled for 9 o'clock. At 8:30, Von Meister stood near the ballroom's magnificent Steinway grand piano, holding court with a small group of symphony board members and wealthy patrons. His voice carried, deliberately, Dean suspected, across the room. "It's quite extraordinary, really," Von Meister was saying, his accent making every word sound like a judgment. "Americans have created an entire industry around what they call music, but which is really just noise with a beat. These crooners," he said the word like it tasted bad, "they stand in front of microphones and read lyrics while orchestras do all the real work. And America treats them like artists. It's fascinating. A cultural study in the democratization of mediocrity." Some of his audience laughed uncomfortably. Others nodded in agreement. Dean heard every word. He didn't react, just took another sip of his drink. He'd heard it all before. The classical snobs who thought anything popular was trash. The intellectuals who measured art by how few people understood it. Dean had been dismissed his whole life. Too Italian, too working class, too commercial, too accessible. He'd learned to let it roll off. But Von Meister wasn't finished. "Take that one, for example," Von Meister continued, gesturing vaguely in Dean's direction. "Martin, he sings romantic ballads to swooning women and tells jokes between songs. The man has made millions doing what any moderately talented individual could do with a microphone and a smile. But ask him to read music, to understand theory, composition, the mathematical precision of Bach, or the emotional architecture of Beethoven. Impossible. These people are performers, not musicians. They're jukeboxes in tuxedos." The group around Von Meister had grown. More people were listening now, including some of Dean's friends from the entertainment world. The atmosphere shifted. This wasn't just academic snobbery anymore. This was becoming a confrontation. Dean set down his glass and walked over. His movements were unhurried, his expression pleasant. When he reached the group, he smiled that famous smile. "Excuse me," Dean said politely. "I couldn't help overhearing. You're Christoph von Meister, right? The pianist." Von Meister looked at Dean with barely concealed contempt. I'm Dean Martin," Dean said, extending his hand. Von Meister shook it limply, as if touching something distasteful. "Yes, I know who you are. The crooner." "That's me," Dean agreed pleasantly. "Listen, I just wanted to say I'm looking forward to your performance tonight. I've always admired classical pianists. The discipline it takes, the years of training, it's incredible." Von Meister's expression softened slightly, surprised by the compliment. "Well, yes, it requires decades of dedication. Something quite different from learning to sing a popular song." "Oh, absolutely," Dean said, nodding. "Different worlds entirely. Although, I've always been curious about something." "What's that?" Von Meister asked, his guard partially lowered. "Well," Dean said, his tone conversational, "you mentioned that guys like me couldn't possibly understand real music. Theory, composition, all that technical stuff. And you're probably right about most of us. But I wonder, is that actually true, or is it just an assumption?" Von Meister's eyes narrowed. "I assure you, Mr. Martin, it is based on considerable experience. Popular entertainers simply don't have the training or intellectual capacity for serious music." The insult was direct now. The crowd around them had grown larger. People sensed something happening. Dean's smile never wavered. "That's interesting. So you're saying that someone like me, and I'm just using myself as an example here, couldn't possibly sit down at a piano and play, say, something by Beethoven?" "Precisely," Von Meister said. "You might know how to press keys to produce a melody for one of your little songs. But actual classical performance? It requires understanding of dynamics, phrasing, technical precision, emotional interpretation. It's not something one simply does. It's the culmination of a lifetime of study." "Right," Dean said, nodding thoughtfully. "So, if I were to sit down at that Steinway over there and try to play something classical, what would happen?" Von Meister laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "You would embarrass yourself, Mr. Martin. Badly, which is precisely why you would never attempt it." "But what if I did?" Dean pressed. "Just hypothetically. What if I sat down right now and played, I don't know, the third movement of the Moonlight Sonata? What would that prove?" The room went silent. Everyone knew the Moonlight Sonata, at least by reputation. The third movement was notoriously difficult, a presto agitato that required incredible technical skill and emotional control. It was the kind of piece that separated serious pianists from amateurs. Von Meister stared at Dean, trying to determine if this was some kind of joke. "Mr. Martin, I don't know what game you're playing, but—" "No game," Dean interrupted, his voice still light, but with an edge now. "You said guys like me are just jukeboxes in tuxedos, that we don't understand real music. I'm asking what would happen if I proved you wrong." "You can't prove me wrong, because you can't play the Moonlight Sonata," Von Meister said flatly. "It's absurd to even suggest it." Dean looked around the room. Every eye was on him. Some people looked excited, anticipating a disaster. Others looked worried, afraid Dean was about to humiliate himself. A few looked hopeful, wanting to see the pompous Von Meister taken down a peg. "Tell you what," Dean said, "let's make this interesting. If I sit down at that piano and play the third movement of the Moonlight Sonata all the way through, no mistakes, you publicly admit that maybe, just maybe, you've been wrong about popular entertainers. That maybe some of us know more about music than you give us credit for." Von Meister's face flushed. "And when you fail?" "If I fail," Dean said, "I'll write a check to your symphony for $10,000 and publicly admit that you were right, that I'm just a crooner who got lucky." $10,000 in 1960 was serious money. The crowd murmured. Von Meister studied Dean, looking for the trap. This had to be a setup somehow. There was no possible way a Vegas crooner could perform one of Beethoven's most challenging pieces. You're serious? Von Meister asked. Completely, Dean said. Von Meister smiled, sensing an easy victory and a chance to publicly humiliate this arrogant entertainer. Very well, Mr. Martin. Please enlighten us all. Show us what a popular singer knows about real music. Dean walked toward the Steinway grand piano that sat on a small raised platform at the front of the ballroom. The crowd parted for him, then followed, forming a semicircle around the platform. Word spread quickly through the ballroom. Within minutes, nearly everyone at the gala had gathered to watch. Dean stood at the piano for a moment, looking at it. His expression was unreadable. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He took off his tuxedo jacket and handed it to a nearby waiter. He rolled up his sleeves. These weren't the actions of someone about to fake his way through a piece. These were the actions of someone preparing to work. What nobody in that room knew, what Dean had kept private for his entire career, was that Dean Martin had been trained as a classical pianist. It started when he was 7 years old, growing up in Steubenville, Ohio, as Dino Crocetti, the son of an Italian immigrant barber. His mother, Angela, had grown up in Italy and believed deeply in the civilizing power of music and education. She'd scraped together money for piano lessons from a local teacher, Mrs. Henderson, who'd studied at the Boston Conservatory. Young Dino showed natural talent. Mrs. Henderson recognized it immediately and pushed him hard. For 6 years, from age 7 to 13, Dino practiced piano 2 hours every day. He learned theory, composition, sight reading. He performed Chopin, Mozart, Rachmaninoff. He won regional competitions. He was good, genuinely good. But at 13, everything changed. His family needed money. Dino started working, first in his father's barbershop, then at a steel mill, then boxing, then dealing cards. Piano lessons became impossible to afford and impossible to fit into his schedule. His mother was heartbroken, but practical. They needed to eat. Dino's hands, which had flown across piano keys with precision and grace, now worked rough jobs. But he never forgot. Late at night, when he could, he'd find a piano somewhere and play, not for audiences, just for himself. It was his secret, his connection to a version of himself that could have been. When he became Dean Martin, the smooth crooner, the easy drunk, the guy who made it all look effortless, he never mentioned the classical training. It didn't fit the image. Dean Martin was supposed to be a natural, a guy who rolled out of bed talented. Admitting to years of disciplined study would shatter the illusion, but he'd never stop playing. In his home, away from cameras and audiences, Dean played Beethoven, Chopin, Liszt. It was his meditation, his escape, his connection to the boy from Steubenville who dreamed of concert halls. Now, standing at the Steinway, Dean felt that boy again. He sat down on the bench, adjusted his position, flexed his fingers. The room was completely silent. Von Meister stood to the side, arms crossed, a smug expression on his face. Dean placed his hands on the keys. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering. Then he began. The third movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata opened with an explosive burst of rapid arpeggios, notes cascading like a waterfall. Dean's fingers moved with shocking speed and precision. The music filled the ballroom, urgent and aggressive, nothing like the gentle crooning that had made him famous. The crowd gasped. This wasn't someone faking it. This wasn't someone who'd memorized a party trick. This was real. This was someone who understood what they were doing. Dean's hands flew across the keyboard, executing the technically demanding passages with fluidity that would have impressed any conservatory professor. The presto agitato marking demanded both speed and emotional intensity, and Dean delivered both. His face was focused, intense, transformed. This wasn't the charming drunk from the stage. This was an artist completely absorbed in his craft. Von Meister's smug expression dissolved into shock, then disbelief, then something like horror. His wife's mouth hung open. The Symphony board members looked at each other in confusion. This wasn't possible. This man was supposed to be a lightweight, a commercial entertainer, a jukebox in a tuxedo. But the music didn't lie. Dean navigated the treacherous key changes, the rapid chromatic runs, the explosive dynamics that made the third movement so challenging. His technique was flawless. More than that, his interpretation showed deep understanding of the piece's emotional architecture. The desperation, the urgency, the barely controlled chaos that Beethoven had poured into these notes. The piece built to its climactic moments, Dean's hands hammering out the dramatic octaves and chords with power and precision. Then, just as suddenly, it descended into the quieter passages, Dean's touch becoming delicate, nuanced, showing absolute control. The final measures approached. Dean executed the closing runs with perfect clarity, building to the final thunderous chords. He struck them with authority, let them ring out, then lifted his hands from the keys. Silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The shock was total. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the room exploded in applause. People were cheering. Some were crying. All were stunned. This wasn't polite charity, gala applause. This was genuine, overwhelmed appreciation for witnessing something extraordinary. Dean stood up from the piano bench, rolled down his sleeves, and retrieved his jacket from a waiter. His expression had returned to its usual pleasant neutrality, as if he'd just finished singing That's Amore rather than performing one of classical music's most demanding pieces. He walked over to Von Meister, who stood frozen, his face pale. "So," Dean said quietly, just loud enough for Von Meister and those nearby to hear, "about that assumption you had, about crooners not understanding real music." Von Meister opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Where did you?" "I studied for 6 years as a kid," Dean said simply. "Classical training, theory, composition, the whole thing. Had a great teacher, Mrs. Henderson. She'd probably be proud to know I still remember what she taught me. But you never mentioned, didn't fit the image," Dean said with a shrug. People want Dean Martin to be the easy drunk who makes it all look simple. Telling them, "I practice piano 2 hours a day as a kid ruins the magic," so I didn't tell them. Von Meister struggled to find words. The man's entire worldview had just been shattered. His fundamental assumption, that popular entertainers were intellectual lightweights without serious training, had been destroyed in front of hundreds of witnesses. "Mr. Martin, Von Meister began, his voice shaking. "I must apologize. I made assumptions. Cruel, unfair assumptions. I dismissed you and your colleagues without knowing anything about you. I was wrong." The words clearly cost him something to say. Dean could see it in his face. "We're all wrong sometimes," Dean said, his tone gentle now. "The trick is recognizing it and doing better." Von Meister nodded, looking older suddenly, diminished. Would you accept my apology? Publicly?" Dean considered this. He could humiliate Von Meister now, grind the man's face in his mistake. But what would that accomplish? Dean had made his point. The audience had seen what they needed to see. "Tell you what," Dean said, "instead of a public apology, how about we do something else? Later tonight, after your recital, maybe we could play something together? A duet? Show these folks that music is music, whether it's classical or popular, and that musicians can find common ground." Von Meister looked stunned by the offer. You would do that? After how I treated you?" "Sure," Dean said. "Why not? Life's too short to hold grudges. Besides, I'd like to hear you play. You're supposed to be pretty good." A small smile appeared on Von Meister's face, the first genuine warmth Dean had seen from a man. "You're far more gracious than I deserve, Mr. Martin." "Call me Dean," Dean said, extending his hand. This time, when Von Meister shook it, there was no liminess, no condescension, just respect. The crowd that had witnessed everything began to disperse, buzzing with excitement, already spreading the story throughout the ballroom and beyond. By the next morning, it would be in the newspapers. By the next week, it would be legend. But in that moment, it was just 2 musicians from different worlds, different backgrounds, different styles, finding common ground in the universal language of music. Later that night, after Von Meister's recital, which was excellent, the 2 men sat at the Steinway together. Von Meister played a melody line from That's Amore in the style of Mozart, and Dean accompanied him with jazz-influenced harmonies. Then they reversed it, with Dean playing a jazz interpretation of Beethoven's Ode to Joy, while Von Meister provided classical counterpoint. The audience loved it, but more importantly, both men learned something. Von Meister learned that talent and serious musicianship existed far beyond the narrow world of classical music. Dean learned that sometimes sharing your hidden gifts, even when it breaks your carefully crafted image, can create moments of genuine human connection. The story of that night became one of Dean Martin's most repeated anecdotes, though he always told it with self-deprecating humor, making it seem like no big deal. But for those who were there, who witnessed a master of popular music reveal himself to also be a serious classical pianist, it was profound. It proved that talent can't be measured by genre, that assumptions about people based on their chosen profession or public image are almost always wrong, that beneath the surface, people contain multitudes, hidden depths, secret histories. Most importantly, it proved that music, all music, deserves respect. Classical and popular, high art and entertainment, concert hall and casino showroom. It's all part of the same human impulse to create beauty, to communicate emotion, to connect with others through sound. Von Meister returned to New York a changed man. He began attending jazz concerts, listening to popular music with new ears, seeking out the technical skill and emotional truth in genres he'd previously dismissed. He even wrote an essay for a music journal about his experience in Las Vegas, titled The Lesson of Dean Martin, on humility and hidden depths. Dean went back to being Dean Martin, the easy crooner, the charming drunk, the guy who made it all look simple. But occasionally, very occasionally, when someone in the industry acted like they were better than everyone else, someone would remember that night in Vegas and think twice before dismissing talent they didn't understand. September 23rd, 1960. The night a famous pianist tried to humiliate Dean Martin by challenging him to play piano as a joke. The night Dean revealed a secret he'd kept for decades. The night prejudice turned to respect, assumption transformed into admiration, and two worlds of music found common ground. The night that proved genius comes in many forms, and that the most surprising people often contain the deepest wells of talent. That's a performance worth remembering.